Fox News alert now. North Korea reportedly is going after President Trump as a, quote, hooligan and lunatic, and warning the United States is running headlong into ruin. Let's go outnumbered overtime now. I'm Harris Faulkner. This follows a report that the U.S. is ready to put its nuclear bombers back on 24-hour alert for the first time since the Cold War. But an Air Force spokesperson is pushing back on that, saying the current plan does not have any such movement in it, but they must be ready if directed. And President Trump is echoing that. He told Fox News yesterday that the U.S. is ready to respond to North Korea if needed. Watch.
We're prepared for anything. We are so prepared like you wouldn't believe. You would be shocked to see how totally prepared we are. Wow. If we need to be. Would it be nice not to do that? The answer is yes. Will that happen? Who knows?
Let's bring in Ambassador John Bolton, former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations and a Fox News contributor and senior fellow for the American Enterprise Institute. Ambassador, always good to see you. So important to get your points of view now on this Monday. I have read an editorial that you have written, and something stood out. You said we can't let Kim Jong-un and his bizarre regime have America by the throat. Why would you put it that way?
Well, I think that's the position we would be in if we allowed North Korea to acquire and retain the capability to hit any target in the United States with thermonuclear weapons, which they are very close to doing, as CIA Director Mike Pompeo said just a few days ago. And that's why I think the president's upcoming trip to Asia is going to be important. This meeting today, the Prime Minister of Singapore, important in its own right to be sure, but also helping to set the stage for that. I think North Korea will be probably the single most important issue for the president, certainly in his meetings in Japan, South Korea, and China, but also with the countries of Southeast Asia as well.
You know, Ambassador, you and I often talk about points of history being so important to go back to. And in your article, and today, I would love for you to tell our viewers about something that happened. Franklin Roosevelt, September 11th, 1941.
Well, you know, this was a period just obviously less than 2 months before the attack on Pearl Harbor, and President Roosevelt faced some very difficult decisions. And one of the decisions that he announced on that fireside chat on September the 11th was giving the U.S. Navy authorization to fire first at German submarines and warships, saying you don't wait when you see a rattlesnake poised to bite before you kill it, basically. And I think this is a lesson in preemption. It's a hard lesson. It's not one we want to face. But I think it's one the president needs to make clear to North Korea and to China that he's prepared to undertake, like Roosevelt did, to protect the interest of the United States. Hopefully there's still a peaceful way to get these nuclear weapons away from North Korea, but time is running out. That's the hard reality. So
what I understand you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're talking about making a preemptive strike on North Korea, right? And we know from recent polling that most Americans don't support that. Is it time, are we getting close to the point where the president should make his own fireside chat?
Well, I don't favor it except as a last resort, but the president was very clear in his speech to the UN back in September when he said denuclearization is the only way forward for North Korea. And that is a rejection of the point of view held by Susan Rice, Barack Obama's national security advisor, and many others who share their views that we could live with a nuclear North Korea. So the conversations in particular that President Trump will have with China when he visits there in just a couple of weeks, I think it's very important to lay that out to the Chinese and make it clear that we are serious and that we're very nearly out of time to make a decision here.
I'm about to quote you to you. Sit tight. You say, or rather you write, in the fireside chat, Roosevelt observed that others, quote, had refused to look the Nazi danger squarely in the eye until it actually had them by the throat. Do you think that there are some in this country who might have some power or some influence who are not looking the danger of North Korea squarely in the eye?
I think the Obama administration spent 8 years not looking the danger squarely in the eye, and I don't think they looked the Iranian threat in the eye either. During this entire period of time, they said, oh, of course we don't want these two countries to get nuclear weapons. It turns out they weren't serious about it. And when they admit, as Susan Rice did, that 25 years of prior efforts over 3 administrations had failed to stop North Korea, she said, well, now I guess we just have to accept it. I do not accept this failure. and I do not accept that the United States should be held hostage by this strange regime in North Korea or by the mullahs in Tehran while we're on the subject.
You know, Ambassador, last hour on Outnumbered, we had some breaking news with the Prime Minister of Singapore here visiting the White House. President Trump, the two of them walked out shortly ago, and they announced a deal where Singapore is going to buy Boeing planes, and they're having conversations about a whole host of things. How does North Korea come up in that conversation between those two leaders?
Well, you know, the United States and Singapore have had an outstanding relationship over decades, and Singapore is a very important ally in trying to prevent China, for example, from essentially taking over the South China Sea and making it into a Chinese province, a major player inside the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and a country that recognizes that nuclear proliferation, whether it's to North Korea or others in the Asia region, is a direct threat to them. Singapore is a tiny country, one nuclear weapon, and there wouldn't be a Singapore anymore. So they've cooperated with us in a variety of ways, including the Proliferation Security Initiative, to stop countries like North Korea and Iran from benefiting from the port of Singapore to acquire dangerous technology like in the nuclear field. Real
quickly before I let you go, also breaking news last hour, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson touching down in Iraq, set to meet with leaders there, including Abadi, the Prime Minister, but potentially also the President of that country. A quick thought from you.
Well, you know, the government of Iraq, sadly, is under the domination of the Ayatollahs in Tehran. It was one of the consequences of pulling American forces out in 2011. I'm not sure there's much that could be done, but I hope one message that Secretary Tillerson delivers is leave the Kurds alone. Don't take any further military steps against them. I think we should be helping the Kurds in material ways, and I hope Secretary Tillerson delivers a very strong message that Iraq and Iran are not going to solve the Kurdish problem by force.
Everybody should read your article. A lot of history in that, which is always good for everybody to see. Ambassador John Bolton, thank you very much.